Hi! I'm glad that you're back. I hope you're all doing great. And before anything else, let us all have a short prayer. Good morning, grade 9 students, and welcome back to my English class. It is fun to learn a new expressive form of writing that relies on rhythm and word choice. Through poetry, you can tell stories and express emotions. It is a subjective art form that allows its authors freedom to express themselves in ways both traditional and innovative. Poems do not have to rhyme, nor do they have to follow any particular structure or include any particular style. You can use poetry as a personal creative medium with no strict rules for its creation. Each work is personal and makes use of different forms and techniques. Still, most poems show a few key characteristics. These are stylistic choices that can vary from piece to piece. Nonetheless, these should be adopted by every poet. And before I discuss to you these characteristics, may I first introduce you a poem. I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. Enjoy. This poem, in my opinion, depicts how human and nature are connected with each other. It can be said that we can always find joy from the things around us. By analyzing this poem, you will find the forms and techniques used by the poet. These are the few generalized rules for writing poetry. First, the use of figures of speech. Mostly, poems are metaphorical. However, it is not limited to it. Other figurative language may be used and applied by a poet to add depth and meaning to his or her work. One good example of a figurative language used in the poem by William Wordsworth is the line, "I wandered lonely as a cloud." This line is an example of a simile. Next feature is meter. This feature is used by poets to control the stressed and unstressed syllables per line, as well as the number of lines per stanza. The poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud is composed of unstressed syllable followed by stressed syllable, divided into 4 per line. For example, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Poets utilize meters to give their poetry different rhythms, which have technical names like iambic pentameter or spondaic heptameter. These names function as measurements for poetry. A poem's rhythm and meter can be broken down and analyzed according to measurements like this. Next feature is imagery. Imagery is something concrete like sight, smell, taste, touch, or hearing. Imagery describes what the poet sees and hears, may it be literal or one that exists in his mind. Visual imagery, which describes what the poet sees, is the most common type of imagery in poetry. It creates a picture that the reader or listener can see in his or her mind. For example, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. This stanza was a description of what the persona in the poem saw. The fourth feature is the punctuation and formats. The punctuations and formats of the poem deal with how it is arranged on the page and how the author intends to present it. For example, the waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. If a poem has frequent line breaks and short stanzas, it forces one to read it in a different rhythm than if it were arranged in longer stanzas with fewer breaks. To better understand this feature, I want you to reread the stanza of the poem and determine the impact made by the punctuations and format. The last feature is rhymed versus unrhymed. Inexperienced poets often think a poem has to rhyme. This is not true all the time. Poems can be rhymed or unrhymed. Poems can even use partial rhyme scheme. There are no set of rules. The poet can choose rhymed or unrhymed scheme during the construction of a poem. If a poet chooses to write a rhyming poem, he may choose to use end rhymes or internal rhymes. End rhymes is where words at the end of the lines of poetry rhyme, while internal rhyming is where words rhyme within a single line. A poet may also choose I rhymes. These are words that don't necessarily rhyme but appear to rhyme when you look at them. For example, said and laid. As a poet, you are free to choose your rhyme scheme. And that is our lesson today. If you still have any question, do not hesitate to message me in my Edmodo account. And for your recitation today, in writing poem, do you think it is always appropriate to create poems through a controlled guidelines? Explain your answer. And to generalize our topic today, poetry, though its entirety depends on how the emotion is executed through words, it is still bounded by features such as figurative speech, meter, imagery, punctuations, format, and rhyme scheme. And for your activity today, write a poem with stanzas not less than 3 in Microsoft Word, then submit it through my Edmodo post. Here are the rubrics for giving grades. For the message, it is equal to 5 points. The use of convention is equals to 5 points. Form is equals to 5 points. Originality is equals to 5 points for the total of 20 points. Thank you so much, grade 9 students. Have a nice day.